to India and Ireland, round Africa and back again. We don't really need to know just where we'll go. Maybe Canada, then to Brazil, then through the Alpine foothills. All I really want to know is, can we go? Oh baby, can we go? Round and around the globe.
Welcome to Take Me With You, episode 64. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Cheryl. We are two well-traveled people who want to go everywhere.
But that's not going to happen. So instead, we'll travel vicariously by inviting a guest to share their unique travel stories with us.
Today, we are taking a little break from having a guest to do a Minisode.
Minisode.
And today's theme is house guests, which is a hard word to say.
House guests. What does that even mean, Cheryl?
Well, I thought it would be cool if we talked about hospitality in one's home. And so both on how to be a good house guest and how to be a good host of house guests. So,
Okay.
Yep. I thought that would be a fun subject to cover because I've stayed with people before and I've had experiences where it is awesome. And I'm like, wow, they're doing all these cool things. And other times where I'm like, oh, I really wish that they had done this. And so I think because I've been a house guest more than I've been a host, I think I probably have more feedback on how to host someone well than
Sure.
Because hopefully I'm a good house guest, but I don't know. And so
Yeah.
so I thought it'd be kind of a cool subject to dive into today.
Cool.
So Ryan, have you ever been a house guest before?
Yes.
Cool. Next topic. Has it been mainly with family, with friends, overseas, in the U.S., a whole assortment?
Yeah, most of the time when I've been a house guest, it's been with family. I have done a little bit overseas with friends, but for the most part, I mean, I guess, so here's the question. Do you count Airbnb as being a house guest?
I would say that's a kind of a different category because that's charging someone money and there's not like a relation there. If we have time, we could talk about how to be a good Airbnb host, I guess. But I mean, kind of. I guess if that person's home, you're kind of a house guest. You're a paying house guest. Yeah,
Right.
That's a gray area. You have done Airbnb where you're just renting a room, correct?
I've done both renting a room and also renting an entire place. Yes.
Okay. Very cool. Nice. I have not done the renting a room, so that is foreign territory for me. But I've done the staying with people that I just met a lot of times.
But usually you've just met them through somebody else that you knew better, correct?
Oh, no. I haven't just like met them at a bar. Like, no, it's like we have a mutual friend and then they say like, you should go stay with this person. And then I contact them and say, hey, we both know this person. Can I come stay with you?
Gotcha.
Or they ask if I can. Yes. So, but it is interesting. I guess that is maybe in some ways a similar experience to Airbnb where it's like, I don't actually know you and I am now staying in your home. But yeah. Yep. And have you hosted a house guest before?
I mean, technically, yes, but not really.
What's the technical?
Well, I mean, you and I both used to volunteer with youth group students, high school students, through our church youth group. And so I've done, overnight events for the guys in my small group or things like that. I don't feel like that falls in the same category. I did have my cousin stay with me once for a night or two, but this was, like 10 years ago, something like that. So I would say functionally, no. What about you?
Not much. Definitely a lot of like students or college students, even when I've volunteered or been a part of different organizations. I occasionally, when I lived in a tiny house in the woods, would have like a friend come out, and they would hang out with me in my house, and then I'd have them just stay in the cabin next to mine. But those cabins didn't have like anything in them
No,
but beds.
they did not.
And so my home was their bathroom and their kitchen and their living room and those things. And so, and then we were neighbors at nighttime. So I've done that a little bit. My family hosted people a lot when I was growing up. Like if, someone was coming in from out of town. But in my adult years, I haven't done much in the way of house guests, actually. So
That surprises me a little bit for you, because you do like, I think, to host people just in general, to have people over, to make them food, to make them feel comfortable. That's not really my thing. Not that I want people to feel uncomfortable, but a lot of those things I feel very inadequate and it's not my area of talent or passion or anything like that. So I'm not surprised that I haven't done it a lot, but I am a little surprised that you haven't.
Yeah, well, like right now I don't have a guest room. And so that makes it a little more complicated. I mean, I have a pretty great double air mattress that is a nice one. And so
That's enticing right there.
And I have a second bedroom, so could make that happen. But in general, you're right. I just love hosting people. I love having people over for dinner. I love making them food and a fun drink and making them feel comfortable and all those things. And so, yeah. Yeah, well, really what got me thinking about this topic was actually when we first started this podcast, right as we were starting to record some episodes. I went to Spain for 3 weeks, and I was a house guest for almost that entire trip, except for just a couple nights at a hotel in Barcelona. And I think I stayed with 6 different people, and going into the trip, I had only met one of them. And so I was staying with people, through that were mutual friends with the family, the couple that I was first staying with. But I was staying with all these different people. And so I saw all these really cool examples of how to host someone really well. And I was a house guest myself for a while. And so I just took some notes down, and it kind of got the wheels turning. And I was like, we got to talk about this on the podcast at some point.
Perfect.
So you and I have both looked up online some advice on being a host and being a house guest. I think first I would love to share from personal experience what I've appreciated, and then maybe we can supplement with what else we've found online. Sure. This is my advice for people if they're going to host someone in their home. So one of the things I love is just really good communication. And I think actually some of this is even when I used to babysit a lot. And, that's also being in someone else's home and they're not going to be there. Even them saying, being super clear about, here's the food that's in the fridge. You are welcome to all of it. You are not welcome to all of it because we're saving this for this thing. Just a good rundown of the home is so nice. Or even if you're hosting someone and maybe they wake up earlier than you, or even saying hey, if you wake up in the middle of the night and you need this, here's where it is. Just really good communication is good. Just letting people know what they are welcome to in your home, especially if you're not around. I think or making it clear that you are someone that they can ask things of. So, even if you say, do you need anything? Maybe it's do you need anything? Maybe some water or this or that. You know what I mean? Giving them some examples to let them know, you are welcome to ask things of me. And so I think in general, just clear communication is nice.
So when you said clear communication, one of the things that I have noticed in life in general that I think would also apply to this is sometimes people don't even know the things that they need to be clear about when they communicate. So you sort of mentioned a few things, you gave some examples for whether they're welcome to things in the fridge or not. What would be some of those categories that you would recommend people think through when they're trying to be clear about communication? Or if not categories, how do you go about determining which things are the important ones for you to be communicating to a house guest? I
think that just put yourself in a traveler's shoes. I think would be a great way to start. And so, especially if someone's been traveling for a while and like maybe you're in the middle of their trip or something like that, just think about what would be your needs if you were traveling in a place you didn't know and you've, been on the road or whatever. So just think through what their evening might entail, what their needs might be. Asking them if they need to do any laundry would be a great one. Offering that, if that is an option that you want to give them. They're going to want Wi-Fi. I was even just reading some things online that said a lot of people forget to tell their house guests their Wi-Fi password. Yeah. And so I've even seen in some people's homes that they have it printed on a little card, or things like that. So, and then hunger, showering, sleeping. So I think just thinking through the different categories of what somebody is going to need while they're staying with you, and then making sure to think through like what can you offer them and how can you talk with them about those things. If they're going to be staying with you for a few days and you're not showing them around the whole time, transportation is a great thing to talk about, or things to do, things to see, getting them a key to your house if they're going to be coming and going at different times. I think those are some of the things that are good with that. And then I liked your other question as far as like, how would you go about determining what else there is? I mean, I think sometimes it can just be asking, and be like, is there anything we didn't cover? Yeah. Is there anything you need? Just I think even that, and that just depends on like if the person will be honest, as long as some people, I think if they feel bad, they won't ask for things. But I think that I feel comfortable asking a host for something if they've already made it clear that they're offering me different things and different options. And then I'll say, actually, and so, or even asking like, a really good thing I've been asked before, even before I arrive somewhere, is someone will ask me, what do you like for breakfast? Or like, hey, I'm going to be gone at breakfast time, but do you want me to get you some eggs or something so you can make yourself breakfast? Or do you drink coffee in the morning? Because we don't, or because we do, So I think just asking some of those questions, even in advance, can be a really nice way to make someone feel welcome.
Yeah, I wonder if another, I guess it's going to depend from person to person, but think through the things where, and this is from the other perspective. So this is not necessarily from the traveler's perspective, which is what you were doing, but from the host's perspective, if your guest were to do something or not do something that would drive you crazy, what would that thing be? And can you communicate about those things too? Because I think that's something that is really easy to happen on both sides, right? Whether you're the traveler in somebody else's house or you're the host who has someone else in your house. And, I think you alluded to it a little bit even with things like when you have access to the bathroom. Do they have their own bathroom? Do they use it any time? What happens if they get up earlier? Are you a morning person? Are you a night person? Like those are things, at least for me, that I would want to know. Like, are you a morning person? Awesome. I'm not. So if you get up, I would just ask that you keep the volume low. Or vice versa. If you're a morning person and they're a night person, great, no problem. Feel free to stay up as late as you want. Just please make sure that after this time you keep things quiet, or whatever, whatever those things are. Or if there's pets, are there anything around, your pets that would be important or not? So I think that's another way that you can think through things is what gets on your nerves and how can you try and preemptively prevent that from happening, because there's probably things that would get on their nerves as well. And the goal is for everybody to have a good experience.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Or it's like, are taking shoes off in the home really important to you? Or do you have a kid that's taking a nap during a certain time or whatever it is? Yeah, I love that. That's great. Yeah. I think even communicating, is there anything weird about your home that is not intuitive?
I mean, I want to word it quite like that.
Yeah.
So what's weird about your home?
Well, no. Like if you have a light switch in a weird place, or it's like your TV is kind of hard to figure out, or, your hot water is backwards, or, different things like that. And that can be tough if someone is staying with you that's from another country, because there are so many things that are weird about people's homes if you're not from that country. And so,
Right. Yeah, it's just different than what you're used to. Yeah.
I think I've stayed with Americans who are living in different countries, and that's kind of the best because they're like, check out this weird place, and they like show you like in a lot of homes in this country, this is how this was built, or this is the design of this thing. And it's interesting to see those aspects for sure. Yeah. I think in addition, another piece of communication is, I've really appreciated when a host gives me options. So like if they're hosting me, not just like letting me crash there, but like entertaining me as well. I love when they say, like, are you tired? Do you need a nap right now? Or like they say like, do you want to go do something, or would you rather stay home? Because I think a lot of times if you're entertaining someone, you're like, we're going to go see all the things. We're going to go. And, it's like, it's nice to maybe have those plans, but then also kind of have some options of like, do you just need to rest, or like, do you need some alone time, or did you have anything that you wanted to see? So I think, I've even had a host tell me before, like, we hang out in the living room. You can hang out with us, or you can go hang out in your room. It's whatever you want to do, And I think even having the freedom to, because I try to be really polite and everything. So I think having the freedom of like, oh, you know what? Like, I would like to be in my room now, or, and so it's just nice to have somebody directly say those options. I appreciate that. Yeah. And then, even like there's just simple things like fresh bedding and, setting out towels and soap, making sure they have what they need for their shower. I have done laundry in people's houses, and it's kind of the best too, just having that option as well. So those are some things that I've appreciated as a house guest. Is there anything that you can think of, or as an Airbnb guest?
Well, yeah, I think Airbnb is a different layer because it is a house guest, but it is also a service. So it's sort of the hybrid between a hotel and being a full-on house guest, because you are in someone's home, someone's property, sometimes just for, like, they only have that property for Airbnb, but oftentimes it's connected to where they actually live, or it is part of where they live if you're renting a room or whatever. And so one of the things that I have appreciated from the places I've stayed with Airbnb is when the hosts are available but not hovering. If that makes sense. So they're there and they're friendly, but you don't feel like they're always there and you're always going to mess something up. Because at least that's the way I do feel when I'm in somebody else's space, is I want to follow their rules because I'm in their space. It's not my space. So how do I make sure that things are the way they're supposed to be, and those sorts of things. And so it's nice to have a host who's friendly and like, oh, here's some things, but not necessarily always there, and allows for some freedom. And I think especially if you're renting a room in someone's house, then that's not just extra important, but tricky, I think, because you are literally in their space. And sometimes it's a great opportunity, especially if it's abroad, to get to know other people, other cultures, that sort of thing. But also, that's their family, or that's their kind of space as well. So you don't want to be invasive. And so really following the lead on what they do. So like, oh, you could come join us if you want to, or, not. I tend to be I feel awkward, so I'm going to go hide type of person. But I think there's also opportunities, and, with some of the hosts that I've stayed with before, having a 5-minute conversation about things and about their background and how did they end up where they are and that sort of thing. What do they like about the city can be really helpful and interesting. And then I think on the far extreme, you've got people like some of our guests have been, like Alex Bell comes to mind, who will just go and talk to people and then find out really cool things and then just go off someplace that he never would have expected. And I think that can be a really cool opportunity when you are staying in someone else's space and getting to know other people that you wouldn't have just in a hotel.
I like that. So I looked up how to be a good host of house guests. It's a weird phrase. How to be a good host, I guess. And Southern Living Magazine has some things to share. So aren't you in luck?
Oh, goody, goody. Can't wait. You know how Southern I am.
I know. You're super Southern. I'm just expecting it to be more proper because I feel like manners in the South.
Yeah. Oh gosh. You know? Like there was an experience I had in, I think I was still in college at the time. So a really good friend of mine growing up got married to a wonderful woman from Texas, and they had obviously a wedding, and it was in California, but there was a lot of the Texas friends and family and all this stuff. And I just remember being overwhelmed by the Southern, I mean, I know Texas is kind of its own thing, but for me, a Northwesterner, it kind of falls into the same big bucket, but just that Southern hospitality. But I felt like there were so many expectations and rules that I did not know, and that was so much more formal than what I was used to, and that what I feel comfortable with. And it was, so when I think of Southern, and when you talk about that, especially in the idea of hospitality, I think that's part of what you're hearing is just feeling that overwhelmed, where I think if that's what you grow up with, it's actually very comforting to know what those boundaries are. But just like a cross-cultural experience, when you go into another country, you're much more uncomfortable when you don't know what the rules are. You don't know what those expectations are, and you just kind of show up, and then there are these expectations, and you're trying to figure out what they are on the fly. So all that to say, that was why I bristled at Southern.
Which is now going to be funny because I think this is going to be really anticlimactic after all of that. Because these are just kind of like similar things to what I said, actually.
Oh, okay then. Never mind. I take it all back.
These are general tips for hosting overnight guests. The first one is tidy up the house, which I can't imagine not doing that. I don't know. I'm a big fan of a clean home.
Most adults at this point do. I mean, right? For me, even if it's not an overnight guest, even if it's just people coming over for the evening. Over,
yeah.
And it's sort of for them, but actually it's more for me, and it forces me for whatever reason to do the cleaning that I had meant to do, but just kept putting off because it's just me. And now it's like, oh no, I needed to do this anyway, so I might as well do it.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny now being married and living with Daryl because I've found that it's a good motivator for him to clean up is if we're having people over. And it is for me as well, but I think even more for him. So it's really fun because I'm like, oh, cool. All of a sudden, like our house is a lot cleaner because like we're both working on this and everything. That makes him sound like he doesn't do anything. But it's like, it's fun to watch the motivation in somebody else, you know, in addition to myself with cleaning. And so, yeah, now I'm like, I just need to like strategically have people over so that I keep my place clean. I know. So that's kind of funny that like, I don't know if that's even necessary to say, but also says have plenty of food and drinks. Keep your fridge stocked with beverages and snacks that your guests can enjoy. This is an idea. This idea is to make it easy for your guests to grab a quick snack whenever they want. And I think that is a good idea, is like to stock up a little bit more with foods.
It depends on who the guest is and in what capacity they're there, I think. And again, with that communication, what are the expectations around food? Is your guest coming and you are truly hosting them the entire time they're there? Or are you just giving someone some place to sleep? Yeah. Or is it somewhere in between? So I think it is definitely a nice thing to do. I think depending on the circumstance, that may or may not be something that's necessary. Although I think everybody would appreciate it regardless.
Yeah. Another option I think for that would be if someone's staying for a little longer and they aren't just going to be eating your food the whole time, would be either offering them a ride to the grocery store or directions to the grocery store based on their transportation, and giving them a spot in your fridge, and saying like, feel free to get whatever you want, and here's a spot that you can put it at. Here's where the pans are, like things like that to make sure that they can use your kitchen. I've done that before where as a guest I want to contribute to the groceries, and so that can be nice too. Yeah. It also says have something planned for your guests. And so saying similar to like if you invite someone over that you have something to do that, you kind of have options of activities in the area. It says don't forget the kids. So if your guests include children, make sure you accommodate them too. If you don't have any children, it wouldn't hurt to pick up a game or two to keep them busy or plan an easy craft. If you and the children's parents have a party to attend, find the names of a few babysitters that you can give to the parents. Don't feel like you have to arrange for the babysitter. The parents will probably need to discuss payment and possibly transportation. So that's an interesting
Or just don't invite over people with kids.
Yeah.
I say jokingly, kind of.
It is so funny though, because now I have a stepson, but as a penguin lover, I have a couple penguin-themed games that happen to be children's games, not really like adult strategy games or things like that. And I just have them because I like penguins. And then there's a few other things I just kind of have in my home that are like also things that children like. And when I used to just like have a friend with a kid over, it was so fun to like bust out like, hey, you want to play this penguin balancing game that I have? And it's like, it's not because I have children, it's because I like this game. And so it is, I don't know, it is kind of fun to have a couple items that are like, this is so easy to bust out for a kid. And so, that can be fun. It also talks about bedrooms, has improve the bed, make sure you have nice sheets, extra blankets. Extra blankets, that's a big one because people
that's a
sleep,
huge one.
Yes, with very different temperatures, and people just have different preferences with that. And so, like whenever I go to a hotel, I never feel like the comforters are thick enough because I love a thick, fluffy comforter.
I was going to say, I've run into that in hotels multiple times where they don't have enough blankets. Some hotels, they do. They have the extra blankets in the closet. And other ones I've been to, there's no other blankets. And I'm like, it's cold in here at night.
Yeah. And people just like, even one time I visited my sister Lisa when she and her husband were living in Texas, and I thought like, we're going to Texas, so I brought like a tank top and shorts to sleep in, and then it turns out it gets really cold there at night, and I was freezing at nighttime. And so the next night I had to ask her for some more blankets because I was like, I didn't know. And so I think just especially when someone's traveling, like they may not even bring the right level of something to wear. So maybe it's even also offering them like, do you need a fan at night? Because some people like to sleep with a fan on, or a space heater, or different blankets or extra pillows. So again, I think just kind of offering people options because everyone has their own styles of what are the little things that really help them feel comfortable and like they're at home. This was an interesting one. Have snacks and drinks in the room. So leave a couple bottles of water and granola bars in is an extra special touch. That way they don't have to leave their room for a midnight snack. I think especially water. I think offering someone water can be nice. Even just a glass that they can fill up or something is a nice touch.
Yeah. I was going to say, that sounds real fancy to me. But yeah, just having a glass of water. Yes.
It's from
seems
Southern
reasonable.
Living magazine.
Yeah. See, that's where it's starting to feel more Southern there.
And then it talks about providing toiletries, so like laying out a few things. I mean, my favorite is just saying like, hey, here's my shampoo, here's my conditioner, you are welcome to use it. Or, and I've done that when I've stayed with people. I've asked them in advance, like, hey, I would love to not have to pack these things. Are you okay if I just use yours? And everybody's fine with that. And so that could be a nice thing too. So those are some pieces of advice. But I think we need to talk about the other end of things a little more, and that's being a house guest. So when you are staying in someone else's home, how do you not be the worst human ever? How do you make people not regret it?
Well, and I think I've alluded to that a little bit.
Yeah.
And I mean, I may take it to the extreme. I always try and take the cue from whoever I'm staying with, wherever that place is. And, even just the example that you gave of asking ahead of time to, hey, can I just use your shampoo and conditioner and things? And I don't think there's anything wrong with communicating that ahead of time, but I never assume that. I just always bring my own stuff. And if they say that, that's great, but I don't want to assume that I'm going to have access to any of those things. I personally don't assume that I can just open their fridge and take anything that I want. But some of that is just me and my own personality. And I don't think that if you do that, it's a bad thing, because like you said, a lot of people they do that specifically for their guests. But I think one of the ways for me that I try and be a respectful guest when I'm staying in somebody else's place is to not assume that any of those things are going to be there. And then again, kind of like you've said, if the host makes mention of something like that, they say, hey, by the way, I got these snacks or these drinks and they're in the fridge and you can help yourself whenever you want, then I'd be like, okay, great. But if they don't ever mention something, I'm probably not going to ask them, and I'm just going to assume that I'm on my own and that's okay, as opposed to going in expecting that a host is going to do all these things for me.
Yeah. I think that's a good rule of thumb across the board. And so before I go somewhere, I'll even ask somewhere like, is it okay if I use your towels? Is it okay? Like even before I arrive, because that way I know how I can pack. I think, so I'm someone who has food restrictions. So going to other people's houses can be a little extra tricky for me. They're not allergies, so it kind of depends on the situation for what I do. But I'm similar to your philosophy. I don't expect that anyone's going to make me anything special. So like if someone has me over for dinner, I can't expect that they would know what my food restrictions are. And along with that, I try to be careful how much I communicate I can't have, because the full list is really long. And so that just sucks and it's not fair. And so, but also it's something where there are people who want to accommodate to all of it and they genuinely want that. And so what I like to do, and this is again someone who, it's not an allergy, it's just a sensitivity. What I like to do is I like to say, hey, just let you know, I have this list of foods I can't eat. In general, I'm really strict about it at home so that it's not such a big deal when I go out. But I try to stay away from, and then I'll list like 2 or 3 things. And I'll ask them like, is that okay? And then they have the opportunity to respond how they want to. And so I've had like, oh yeah, we just won't cook with those things. Great. And they don't ask further questions or anything. I've had the like, we can do something on the side. I have offered for me to go buy my own groceries and figure out my own food. Just actually, and separately from that, I love to cook, and I love to cook for people. So one of my favorite things to do as a house guest is to cook at least one of the dinners for the whole group. And so if they're normally cooking while I'm there, I like to say, hey, I would love to cook dinner tomorrow night for you guys as a thank you. And so that can just be a fun thing. And then also I can cook foods that I can eat that way.
Sure.
And then occasionally, and this has been like one of the hugest things ever, is I've had someone ask questions and they said, oh, well, what are your food restrictions called? Can I look it up? And I've told them about it and they've looked it up, and then I come to their house and printed on their fridge is the full list of what I can't have. And they're like, look, I figured it out. And then like, I mean, one of my brothers-in-law, like he memorized it pretty much. And so I'll come to their house and he will say like, oh, Cheryl, that's safe for you to eat. And he already knows. Like he doesn't ask me questions about it anymore because he already knows how to Google it. And so, and I feel so loved when that happens, because it's like, oh my gosh, like I don't expect anyone to cater to my food restrictions. And it's so kind when people do. And so, I think for people with allergies, that's got to be a lot harder, but I think you have to talk about it ahead of time. Even if you go and expect to just buy your own food, you don't know where the closest store is maybe, or what if they already have dinner like on the table when you arrive, and so it's like a thing where you just can't have assumptions when it comes to food on either end. And so I think, and then on the host end, I would say it's just ask if they have any food restrictions or preferences. You know, if they're like, I just absolutely hate this one thing, it's really nice if you know that ahead of time, especially if they have kids, you know, because kids can be a lot more picky.
Yeah. Yep, for sure.
Yeah. So I think that's a big one, is talking about food, because you're in a home, you know, and so that's just going to be a thing that happens. Yeah, I think for me, what are some other things I do? I just ask questions before assuming. I think that's just in general. It's like, hey, is it okay if I use this? Is it okay if I whatever, you know, and like, I try to be really polite about it and not ask too much. And, yeah, I think a lot of that is also just kind of letting go of certain things, you know, and being like, I'm not going to be super particular, you know, if, I can be flexible, you know, and I think staying in someone else's home is a really good time to be flexible, or having someone stay in your home. So I found a list from Real Simple magazine on how to be a good house guest.
Is it simple?
So actually the headline is how to be such an amazing house guest you'll get invited back every time.
Ooh.
Yeah. The first one, actually the first two, leaves me to not have a lot of hope for what kind of awful people are reading this. Number one is be clear about how long you're staying. Who wouldn't? Like, I don't...
Okay, but oh, no. But that happens more than you might realize. I think especially when it comes to family. The number of friends and coworkers that I've talked to who have family that come and then just kind of stay is not an insignificant number.
Really?
As a matter of fact, yeah. And it's usually family, I think, that I hear it about. And now I'm mixing a couple of things. But at one point, this was a number of years ago now, I flew out to Alabama. I have some family that live in Huntsville. And I went out there to visit them. And they were unbelievable hosts. They're my family, so I love them. So, you know, I might have a little bit of bias there. But amazing, and took me places that I never would have thought about, and were just incredibly gracious and friendly and things. But at one point, my aunt said... and I don't remember how long it was, but there was a certain time frame, and I want to say it was like 4 days or 5 days or 3, I don't know, some number of days. She said, you know, house guests are like fish. After X number of days, they start to go bad. And so it's like this idea that you don't want them to just be around for forever, because even if they're people that you really, really love, give it enough time and they're going to get on your nerves. So I think there is some truth to that. And I think also, like you said, that clear communication, and I think setting expectations. If you know that someone's going to be there for 8 days, then you know that even if something's driving you crazy, you know when it's going to end. Whereas if there isn't a clear end time, now I think that grates at people even more.
Yeah, I could see that.
Because then it's also like, well, how do I tell you that you need to leave without you being insulted, or without me seeming rude or like a jerk, when really I need you to leave for maybe legitimate reasons or whatever, you know? So I do think that that's helpful. And even if it's like, I don't know how long I need to be here, even communicating that, you know, and it's like, I'm going to be here for here, or it's like an indefinite amount of time. So I moved this summer, and I sold my condo and moved out, but hadn't found my current place yet. And so I moved in with a friend of mine, Kyle. And that was one of those too, where it was like, okay, so I don't know for sure how long I'm going to be here, but my plan is to be here until I find another place, right? So even though there wasn't a clear end date, and it was, you know, a roommate, I was paying him rent. It wasn't just like I'm staying and you have to host me, you know, that sort of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it was still one of those where I was a guest in his house, and I wanted to make sure that I was respecting his space and his time and all of that sort of stuff, so that he didn't feel like I was just staying there forever. And I mean, he wouldn't have cared if I had stayed for, well, probably forever. But we talked about it and he wasn't worried, but it was still something that I wanted to make sure it was clear. This is not a forever thing. This is until I find another place and I'm actively looking, to give him some idea. And then once I did have an idea when I was moving out, again, clearly communicating, okay, it looks like I'm going to try to move out by this date. So again, he could plan anything else that he needed in that. So even if you don't know the end time initially, I think continuing to communicate around that can be helpful.
Yeah. Wow. You had a lot more to say on that. I just thought, like, who does that? And apparently people do that. So that's really good advice. I like that. Another one, don't show up unannounced. Again, I have never experienced this in my life, but I know that some people do. I've heard tell.
Yeah. I don't have anything to say with that one. I've heard as well, but I never have.
I haven't even shown up, not to stay, but just to say hello to someone unannounced. And so I just it's very foreign to me. But I think that's not our culture here.
I think that's just I was going to say that's a difference in our culture. I think both generationally, and then also I think this particular part of the country as well, just because we tend to be fairly scattered. I don't know that we have the close neighborhoodness, I don't know what word that would be, as maybe some other parts of the country or some other periods of time where people really do, know all their neighbors around and will just pop by or whatever. And I think that does still happen to some extent. And I know it still happens in this area to some extent, but I don't think that that's the norm, at least for us. And so I think that's some of it. Whereas if you're in a different culture for whatever reason where that is the norm, then I do think that there's an element of don't abuse it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. Another one is bring a thoughtful gift. I think that's a great idea. I love to bring just a little gift. Usually I try to have it be just something from where I'm from. So maybe, my favorite is Theo chocolate. So just something that, for me, I like to do something that doesn't cost a lot and doesn't cost a lot in the space it takes up in my suitcase. But it's something that is fun and a lot of people enjoy and unique to where I'm from. And so that can really be a fun thing to do. Another option would be bring a blank thank you card and you could write someone a thank you note and leave it when you leave. That could be another thing. Or like I said, my favorite thank you is to cook someone dinner, while I'm staying with them.
Sure. So when you bring the Theo's chocolates, do you, if you're going back to the same place, do you bring the same gift again?
No, I don't think I would unless I really knew that they liked one flavor of it. If they were if they were, living in another country and they really said, oh, I really missed this one, then I would definitely bring it because I'd be like, well, you said you missed it, so here's some more. Another thing, I'm trying to think of other things. Honestly, one time I went to Spain and I just Googled I forget what I Googled. It was something to do with what's something that's hard to buy out of the United States. Essentially, if you're from the U.S. and you're not living there, what's really hard to get? So one thing was Burt's Bees. That they have, their chopsticks and some products and stuff. I mean, I love Burt's Bees products. And apparently you can't really buy it out of the U.S. And so I was staying with two different people that time. So I brought a bunch of Burt's Bees chopsticks. Both families, when they had them, they were like, oh, I miss this so much. And so they were thrilled to have that. I brought Market Spice tea, which is a popular tea from the Seattle area. And that was fun because my friend said that she was about to run out of it and she moved with some of it because she loved it so much. So those were just, I made really good guesses, I guess educated guesses. Another thing though, instead of having it be a surprise, if you're going to go see someone and they're living far away from home, just ask them is there anything you miss from here that you'd like me to bring for you? Yeah. And just kind of using that as an opportunity to do some exporting for them. So, I had someone ask me to bring them coconut oil one time because it was really expensive and they like to cook with it. And so, just it can just be a nice favor to do so they don't have to pay for shipping for something that they want from home. So, or even as simple as Trader Joe's is not in the Yakima area, and when I lived in the Yakima area, I had a coworker who loved it, and so whenever I came back to Seattle, I would ask her what she wanted me to get her from Trader Joe's, and so, I mean, it's just across the state,
little things.
But another one on here is follow the house rules.
Yep.
I think that is kind of what we were already talking about is whether you should take your shoes off or you shouldn't bring your phone to the dinner table. Be in tune with your hosts. I think that's just great, is like pay attention to your hosts and kind of see what they're doing. And then the next one is limit your phone use. Spending too much time with your face in a screen will make your hosts feel like they're boring you, and honestly, you might be boring them. It makes your company feel like there's somewhere else you'd rather be, or someone else you'd rather be spending time with. Try to limit screen time around them and only check emails, texts, and social media in the privacy of your own room.
That's
I think
actually
that's
really
great
good
advice just for life, but certainly when you're staying with someone.
Yeah.
I like this next one as well. Act more appropriate than usual. So before you walk down the hall covered by a towel, curse or tell inappropriate jokes freely, or come downstairs for breakfast in your PJs, take cues from your host. When in doubt, err on the side of modesty. If you're headed out to dinner with your host, ask what the right attire might be for the restaurant so you can pack accordingly. I think that's really nice.
Yep.
And then be extremely helpful. So examples are helping load the dishwasher or help cooking or drive people in your car, occupy the kids while their parents take a well-deserved nap, things like that can be a nice, helpful thing. And try to be self-sufficient is another one on here. I like that. Like if your hosts are working during the day or different things like that you can kind of... Ryan, you seem like you try to be very self-sufficient when you're staying with people.
Yes, I try.
Bring your own toiletries. Hey! That's another one on here. And then leave things cleaner than you found them. I mean, that's just a really good life advice as well. When in a space, try to leave it cleaner than you found it. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, and I would say even, like, I try to do that even, well, maybe not cleaner, but even like at a hotel where I know that there's, housekeeping and things like that, I still try to not leave things a complete and utter mess because somebody else is cleaning up my mess. I don't know, that just seems rude to me. I know a lot of people think, well, that's their job. I'm like, well... Is it though? Or is it their job to just grab the things to do the laundry and to change the sheets and to make sure things are tidy? Or is it their job to clean up after me, the slob? Like, I don't know that that's really their job.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. So that's what I have. Do you have any other thoughts on this category?
I don't know that I do. I thought this was funny. I did find the 10 commandments of being a good Airbnb guest.
Oh, okay. That sounds good.
And we don't have to take very long, but I just thought it was funny the way that they did it because they did it like the 10 commandments, which I just find funny.
Yes. Okay.
Thou shalt read the whole listing. Which I think is really important. I've done quite a bit with Airbnb, and there are often really important details in the listing. They will often put their house rules in there and things like that. So it's helpful to have looked through that before you agree to something and before you show up and ask 80 million questions that they already put in the listing. Now, sometimes things aren't super clear, so I also think it's okay to ask, whether it's in a message beforehand or whatever, but say, hey, it said this, but is that there too? Because sometimes they've just clicked the wrong thing, or sometimes they're managed, they're property managers, so they do multiple places and can't keep straight. But they say, thou shalt not ask to pay in cash, because that's Airbnb's policy. And I think that's smart. Thou shalt not lie about how many people are coming. That's one for me that I feel like people do that. And I'm like, yeah, no, they probably do.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we did that with, right before my wedding, a few of us girls stayed in, I think it was a VRBO that was right near the wedding venue. And my maid of honor was planning a party the night before, and we thought like, oh, this will be great. And so on the listing, it said you can't have parties there. And so she messaged the host and explained the situation. And she said, we want to have this group of people over for dinner. This is what it's going to be. Is that okay? And they said yes. And so... And then it all worked out and we were able to do it and there weren't any problems with that.
Yeah. It's almost like communication was important.
What? No, that can't be it.
Thou shalt let your host know if you're running late. I think that one can be really important, especially if your host is meeting you for something. And sometimes that can happen, especially if you're doing this internationally or, you're just in another city or whatever, just letting them know, hey, my flight was delayed. I'm not going to be able to be there on time, whatever the case may be. I think that can be really helpful. But I've even done that with family before. When your sister and Ben were living in Colorado, I flew out to visit them. And I have an aunt and uncle that were living there at the same time. And so I did like an overnight day trip, drove out to see them and spent some time with them. And while I did, on the way back, I ended up staying with Ben and Lisa a little bit later than I originally planned. And so then I just called my aunt and uncle and said, hey, I'm still coming, but I haven't actually left yet. I hope that's not a problem. I'm so sorry, whatever. And my aunt commented later, was like, you definitely didn't have to, but thank you so much. That was really considerate. So it's, even with family, being able to just be considerate of other people's time, I think is important. And then especially with people who aren't family, if they're coordinating something, I think it's helpful to let them know if you're running late.
I think with what we've talked about as far as family goes, it sounds like maybe everyone needs to treat their family a little bit less like family and a little bit more like friends that they're trying to keep. And then maybe those interactions would go better. Like my family just doesn't do those things. And I have all these family members, extended family too, that are just really nice to each other and considerate. And it's like we're choosing to be in each other's lives still. I mean, because it's like, I don't think family has to be in each other's lives. So maybe let go of the assumed they have to keep me and actually try to keep the people in your life. That's my advice for the day.
There we go. Thou shalt read the rules and follow them. I feel like that's... It goes along with similar things. But yeah, and your story about the bachelor and bachelorette party, I think is a great example. The house rules said no parties. Okay, great. So instead of trying to be sneaky, communicate with the person. Here's what it is. Here's what we are going to be doing. Here's what we're not going to be doing. And they were totally fine with that.
We're not having a rager.
No,
we're not going to trash the place.
Yeah, like what they meant by party wasn't the same thing. And so it was totally fine, So I think that's important to be respectful. They put the rules there for a reason.
Yeah.
Thou shalt be considerate of your neighbors. I think that one's super important too. Whether that's people in the next room or in the next house or whatever, that could deal with parking. There's lots of ways that I think that could play out, to just be aware that a lot of people around, especially with an Airbnb, they may live there. So while you're only there for maybe a few days or a week, these other people may be living there. So be considerate about the people who live there.
I love that, because it kind of sounds like it might be the worst to live next to an Airbnb house sometimes. Yeah. So,
well, I know a lot of places have tried to ban them because of some of those things, complexes that say, no, you can't because there's really loud parties or, whatever that becomes a disruption for people's regular lives. Yeah. You'll like this one, Cheryl. Thou shalt respect their pets.
Respect their pets.
Yeah. The owner's pets.
The owner. Okay, so if you're staying with someone and they have their pets there. Oh, yeah. That would be very weird if I had anyone staying in my home that was being mean to my animals.
Really? You don't think that would be okay?
I would shut it down.
Thou shalt not steal their stuff. Oh, my gosh.
Oh, gross.
That's another one. I was like, really? You have to say that? But yes.
Horrific to have, a paying guest in your home, then also steal your stuff.
It says you shouldn't steal towels from your hotel, and you definitely should not steal anything from your host. But apparently people do that too. People will take towels from hotels and Airbnb. I was like, no. Those are not yours to take.
Well, I think with all of it, it's like if we want Airbnb to survive and we want it to be an industry that is still a good one, then be a good part of it, because otherwise people aren't going to keep hosting if people make it awful for them to host,
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. Thou shalt keep your mess to a minimum. I think I kind of
Yep.
talked about this. I like the way it says most Airbnbs have cleaning fees that are added on by the host who set the price, but just because you're paying for them to clean up after you doesn't mean you can destroy the place. Leaving the bed unmade is one thing, but please don't be gross and give your host a reason to complain.
Yep. I like that.
Yeah, I think that's
Well,
good.
and again, if like I would love if there were either none or very low cleaning fees. But if every guest ever makes it so that you have to pay cleaners a lot, then that's not going to be the case. And so, like,
Right.
if all of us as Airbnb guests can make it so that, like, cleaning is almost unnecessary, that's not going to change the current cleaning fees that we're paying, but, like, that might change what hosts choose to do when it comes to cleaning
Right.
fees.
Well, and I
Because some of them are steep.
some of them are. And I'm pretty sure that I've stayed in places before where they actually say in the description that they try and keep those cleaning fees really, really low. But that means that you take out the garbage and you like sweep up after and things like that. But I think that's totally reasonable. Where it's like, yeah, we're trying to keep
Yeah.
the costs low, so you're staying here, so clean up after yourself. I'm like, that's what adults do. Adults clean up after themselves.
Well, and the beauty of Airbnb is it feels like you're home. So it feels like you're just living in another place temporarily.
Yep.
But so then act like you're home and like do what you would do in your
Well,
own
it
home.
depends.
Like,
Some people don't clean up in their own home, so.
don't mess it up for everybody.
All right. And the last one says, thou shalt show your appreciation with a note. It says, and finally, if you really want to seal the deal, show your host how much you appreciate their hospitality with a handwritten note or even a small gift. It's simply a nice thing to do. And if it leads to a good review, even better. So, I mean, I
that's
don't
a
think
good
that's
point.
necessary, but I think that there are, especially if you've done a lot of Airbnbs, and there are some that definitely go above and beyond. And I think the reviews are actually a big deal because that's how people choose spots, is based on the reviews. But I think there can be a nice thing about a written note. The one thing I would say about that, though, depending on the property, sometimes the host isn't going to get it if there's a nice note there.
Yeah.
Because they're renting it out all the time. So I would say it's a nice idea. You may want to do a little bit more research before you just leave a note there.
Yeah. I like
There you
those.
go.
I think that's good. Well, it's really funny. So I work in fundraising, and I mean, I do the event.
Did you say fundraising or fundraising?
Well, I'm the event planner, so I get to do some fundraising at the fundraiser. Oh my gosh, I just
There you
watched
go.
that Office episode where Michael Scott clarified that he actually had a fundraiser, so it's okay that it lost money because it was not a fundraiser.
Are you watching through The Office?
Yes, I am. Yes, with the Office Ladies podcast.
Hey, me too.
Really?
I know, it's so
Yes.
good. I couldn't wait because they stopped in December for a bunch of
know.
episodes. So I may have binge watched like a ton.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing right now too.
Yeah, it's so good.
It's so good. Oh, they are just delightful. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I love it.
Oh, yes. If you're podcast listeners, if you're looking for another podcast,
Yep.
we do not get any sort of kickback or anything like that. But the Office Ladies podcast is hilarious because
It's so
the
good.
hosts are actually friends, and you can tell. You can tell
Yes.
that they're not just doing it because they did the show together, but they enjoy each other.
They just wanted
Hopefully
an excuse.
you get that
Yep.
sense from us here on this podcast, but I guess I don't know.
I hope so. But so something I've learned in fundraising is the importance of a handwritten note, and that that makes a difference with a lot of people. Like after we have a fundraising event, we send out handwritten thank you notes to everybody who gave, and we send them out the same day. So people receive them in their homes just a couple days later. They also get a personal
Oh,
thank
wow.
you call. And that makes all the difference for some people to want to give again, And so it's like, that is not dead. Handwritten notes, thank you notes are not dead. And they still mean something, and maybe they even mean more to people now because no one expects them. And so
That's true.
yeah, I would say that if you really want to put a nice little bow on something, leaving a handwritten thank you note is a great way to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right.
Love it.
So what do you think? Have we Have we talked this thing up?
Yep, I think we beat that dead horse. So
I don't know if it's a dead horse, but
well, apparently not, because apparently people are showing up at people's houses uninvited, unannounced for limitless amounts of time. So I guess we had to talk about this.
and then not cleaning up after themselves.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. All right, but let's go ahead and transition to the last part of our podcast called Wish You Were Here. During this segment, Cheryl, you and I will each highlight a travel attraction from the places that we have been and just give a little snapshot, like a little postcard that says, Wish You Were Here.
Yay.
What would you like to do for your Wish You Were Here today, Cheryl?
So today I would like to talk about something in Los Angeles that I did not know was in Los Angeles until one of my most recent visits. And that is the Grand Central Market. So it is in LA proper, which there's Los Angeles County, which is massive. And then there's Los Angeles, which is actually, for a city, pretty small. And I mean, it feels like a market in a lot of other places. I don't know if there's anything like super like LA unique about it other than markets are just fun. And I just like, when you think about like, oh, what's there to do in downtown LA? It's like, I don't know, shopping, but like, it's so fun. It feels like Pike Place or like markets in other countries. It's all under a cover and there's all these little booths and you can get foods of all sorts. So I didn't spend a ton of time at the market because I was actually on my way to go up the Angel's Flight funicular that I shared about a long time ago. I think it was like in the 20s. But it's like
the 1920s?
It's like this really old, like slanted railway $1 ride that you can do, and it's in the 500 Days of Summer movie, and like it's adorable. So anyway, the market is like right next to it, and so it's kind of fun to go do both of those things. And I wish I'd eaten lunch there because all of the food looked really good. So check out the Grand Central Market in LA.
Cool.
How about you, Ryan?
I am going to take us to Florida, specifically Tampa Bay, and to Busch Gardens theme park. And there is a very specific thing that you can do in Busch Gardens theme park called the Serengeti Safari.
Ooh.
So unlike your sister, I have not been to the actual Serengeti, but I have been on the Serengeti Safari at Busch Gardens in Tampa Bay, Florida. And it's really cool. So they put you in the back of a truck and you stand, and they have this really, really big area that they've laid out like the Serengeti, and they have the animals just free roaming, and they drive you around and you can watch just kind of what the animals are doing. And so it's kind of like a zoo, except bigger, and you're in it. You're in the exhibit. And it's just really cool. And one of the things you get to do is you get to feed giraffes from the truck. So you drive over to where the giraffes are, and then you can hold up whatever the leaves or whatever the food part is, and then their like tongue will come around and loop around it and pull it in, and they're right there, heads right there by you. It's really fun. It was a really cool experience, and you have to pay extra in order to do that. It's not included with just the entrance into the park, but it's still really, really fun. Although I would say this is not the same thing, but if you're going, the thing you might want to look into, Cheryl, and I would definitely recommend the Serengeti Safari, but they do also have the Penguin Insider Tour. So you might want to do that one.
Penguin Insider. Can I hug a penguin?
Well, what it says is, because I haven't done this one, go behind the scenes of Penguin Point and meet our penguins. I don't know if it means you can hug them.
Oh, but you can go. Oh, I want to go do that.
But I'll bet you'd get closer to them.
And this is at the same place as the Serengeti?
Yep. Are you familiar with Busch Gardens?
I feel like Tori talked about it on her episode with us.
Yeah. So it's like, kind of like Disneyland, but more, think more SeaWorld. It's like SeaWorld, except it's not sea animals, it's land animals.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a zoo, but it's made more like a theme park.
Okay.
So they have roller coasters and rides, but they also have a lot of animals and things like that you can see. So it's kind of
Cool.
a theme park zoo hybrid.
Nice. That sounds great.
Yes.
I'll go pet a penguin.
Okay.
That's what I took out of that. But that does sound good because even like I remember that the Seattle Zoo, the Woodland Park Zoo, they had elephants for a long time. And then they ended up realizing that that small of an area just was not good for the elephants and them to live.
Oh,
a
is that
good
why they
life.
got rid of the elephants?
Uh-huh. And so they
Well, good for them.
I know that zoos do like I think they do a lot of like trading of animals. And so I don't remember exactly how it worked, but they found a zoo somewhere in the South that had a ton of land. And that's really what's good for elephants is to have miles and miles of land.
Yeah.
And so I remember that, you know, was a good thing for them. So I'd imagine something like this is probably a lot closer to the animals' preferred way of living. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Well, and the weather, I think, is probably closer there than, say,
Than
here in
Seattle,
Seattle as well. So down in Florida, warmer temperatures.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's all we got. Don't you think, Cheryl? I think it's time to wrap it up.
So
All right. So if you would like to follow us on social media, we are at Timwy Podcast, TMWI for Take Me With You Podcast on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook.
you can email us at timwepodcast@gmail.com. This week, I want to hear stories of your experiences as a house guest or having a house guest, especially if there's any horror stories about things going terribly wrong.
Yes.
We want to hear it.
Yep,
so,
those are the best,
or
worst
maybe
stories.
we missed a tip. Maybe there's something that you were just shouting at your podcatcher the whole
Oh,
time.
I'm sure we missed something, Cheryl.
Tell us what we missed. We would love to hear it so we can learn too.
We would. And if you are willing to not just give it to us by typing, but also by speaking, you can call us and leave us a voicemail. Our number is 406-763-8699, or if it's easier to remember, 406-POD-TIMWE. Please go ahead and rate and review us so that we can get some feedback from you all. Please share us on social media, and don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode.
As always, thank you to Beth Reed Miller for the use of her artwork. You can check out more of her artwork at Beth Is Something. And thank you to Erica Corbin for the use of her song Round the Globe. You can listen to Erica's music wherever music is sold or streamed.
That's it for this week. So until next time, remember to take me with you.
Take me with you!
Can we get a sailboat chasing down the sunset as we float round and round the globe? Salty air and balmy nights, guided only by the lights above, and a little love. Oh, the world is out there waiting to explore, and all our troubles here wanting to be